We are live. Welcome, Kirsty, to our Facebook group.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we have been chatting for a good 20 minutes already, so it feels like we have done a lot already, but we're going to chat for our group now. So I'm very happy to have you here to talk about your online program and to talk about art with children in general. Because it's a main, kind of a big question in this group is for us parents when we have little toddlers who start to be interested into mark making and Play-Doh and these kind of things. It's like, oh, how do we start? And then the next stage with your program, I found it's like, how do we keep going? When they really want to draw and we have maybe no artistic talents or no artistic inclination, how do we, help them? So we are here to talk about that today. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Great. So if you can start to maybe introduce yourself and, just explain a bit about you. And you are an art teacher, you are an artist yourself. So if you can just explain a little bit about you.
No worries. So my name's Kirsty and I'm an artist and I'm very passionate about teaching kids to draw. I have 2 kids of my own. And yeah, it sort of started when I was doing kids art classes in Sydney many years ago, about 2007. We started doing that in Paddington. And then, cutting a long story short, I moved back to Adelaide and then was doing a lot of artists in residence programs in schools. And very quickly realised that teachers have to be all sorts of things. They have to be mathematicians, scientists, all sorts of things to teach their students. And a lot of them cannot draw, were never taught to draw as kids. And so that's when I started doing, I was asked to do a class with every single class in this particular school. And then the principal said to me, now, for one of the classes, we're going to put all 3 classes together. Is that okay? And I said, oh, yeah, sure, that's fine. I said, oh, how many kids have we got? And he said, 91. And I was just like, oh, my goodness. So I thought I can't physically fit 91 kids around a table. So I filmed my lesson to show the students when I came in that day. And then they followed along step by step. And I could not believe the result. Every single child finished that class with an artwork. And normally a lot of the kids, especially the non-arty kids, wouldn't produce anything. Anyway, so that's sort of where it came from. But I also think, yeah.
Yeah, that's quite an adventure since.
Yeah.
So yeah, do you remember basically how you were introduced to art when you were a child? Or this,
Well, I do have a couple of memories when I was about 6. I was I always loved drawing, and so when I was about 6, I went to an art school here in Adelaide, South Australia, and that little art school is still going. But yeah, I was about 6, and I just remember seeing the art teacher. We used to do a similar thing. We used to crowd around the table and watch this art teacher draw whatever the subject was for that particular week. And I just remember being fascinated by seeing a blank piece of paper and how this adult, me being a 6-year-old, could turn this blank piece of paper into an artwork, a drawing, something that made sense. Maybe it was a person, maybe it was a vase, maybe it was whatever, but it always looked like what this person had set out to draw. So I think that has a lot to do with what I've created as well, being able to see the entire artwork from a blank piece of paper all the way through to an artwork being complete.
Yeah, so I think you have answered my next question already, because when my next question was about how did you come up with Artventure, and you have explained,
Oh, sorry, yes.
Yep. In the classroom, that's fine, okay, that's perfect. And with too many children to teach one by one, so you had to come with something, so the video one. So maybe the next one, because I think that's the main question that come up, with your program, is like, it's copying somebody. And how does it fit with being creative and being, wanting to do what you have in your mind, and being maybe self-directed. And obviously, because it's a Montessori group, we have this idea that children will choose what to do and will have their own ideas. And obviously, when we think about copying someone, it seems to be the opposite of that. But
it does.
In fact, you have a kind of an answer for that. That is quite interesting to hear.
Yeah, so obviously within the structure of what Artventure is, which is creating an artwork, there are choices there the whole time. So, for example, if you're working with, I was working with a little girl today and she's 4. And so we said, okay, well, me as the adult, I'll choose level 1 because I know that that's where she's going to feel success within that boundary. So we chose level 1 and then she chose whatever artwork she wanted to do. She chose the balloon, and then second, she wanted to choose the lollipop. And then within that, obviously, I show her, here is my balloon. It's red and the sky is blue. But I've worked with lots of kids where they do the balloon, but then they decide their balloon's going to be yellow or blue, and then the background's going to be green or whatever it might be. So the choices are still there. It's just different. And what it's doing is it's actually building that child's motivation with their drawing skills, because what they're doing is they're following along step by step, which then helps them realize, how to create something by mark making, if that makes any sense. And I always refer to it like writing. If there's a child that can't write, we will sit with them and we will find different ways, different techniques to show them, to teach them how to read and write, so that they can write their own stories and, become journalists or mathematicians or whatever. But without that foundation, they can't do those things, and we help them. And this is why I've created Artventure, so that I'm helping with that really foundation stuff, so that once they've got that motivation and inspiration, then they can actually go off and do their own. And that's the number one thing that we find from our clients worldwide. We're at Artventures in 147 countries, is that students, kids, at home, at school, wherever, the teachers are actually reporting back saying that my child is actually drawing more than they ever have before because they've got that motivation and inspiration from Artventure. So, yes, there is something to be said for copying or not copying, but at the same time, those choices within that really helps them bloom so that they can make their own choices elsewhere as part of their everyday life.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, they can be creative within the drawing, and it's all about learning the skills.
Yeah, exactly.
And then do what they want to do. And in the first stage, within the Montessori classrooms, that's where I have the most experience, between 3 to 6 years old, is that there is we don't ask the children to do like a card for Mother's Day, for example, or whatever, but they have all the material available, and we demonstrate how to use a pen brush, we demonstrate how to use crayon, but what they're going to do with it, it's their choice. And obviously when you go further and they have like this idea, I'm going to draw, a cat, and they look at their cat, they need a bit of guidance. How do we draw a cat? Yeah. And as you say, they can be very creative. That's my son did a shark. And, in the one you do the seaweed and a lot of little fishes around. And he was adamant. He didn't want to do that. He said, no,
perfect.
It's going to be that. And I said, yes, that's fine. You do whatever you want. And so it's very much about making his own choices when it's come to choosing the colors. And sometimes they change the kind of, media they use. They wanted to finish with crayons and not with watercolors that day. So
exactly. And Artventure's been designed so that you can actually use it as a tool. So I love the fact that you don't actually need paints. You don't actually need oil pastels. If you've got an envelope that's been sent to you in the post, you turn it on the back. If you've got a pencil there, you can draw on the back of the envelope. It's not about the materials. It's not about creating an amazing artwork. It's about doodling, drawing, making marks on a page and learning that, this, if I start with this hill and then if I add this bit and that bit, like the shark that you've just shown me, then, really simple shapes turn into something else. And then their little brains go, oh my God, I've just done this and I've just done that and it fits together and now it's a shark. If for a little kid, it's quite amazing to them that what they've just created is something that they can show grandma or grandpa, and then they're going to say, oh, great shark, Johnny, or, So it's Artventure is a tool that people can use to, just like a paintbrush. You can use it in certain ways, whichever way you want, really.
Yeah, and they're absolutely proud to show all the drawing. And because my family is abroad, we do that through Skype. So or Sunday doing that. Look, I've done this. And so they really love to do that. Obviously, in my situation, my dad is an artist as well. So they kind of share that passion together. And my son, strangely enough, my family is French speaking. And we are both, my husband and I, French speaking. My daughter speaks very good French, but my son doesn't speak a good French. He just didn't want to speak, So it was easier for him to just go straight away to English. And so because he doesn't speak well, he cannot really communicate with his granddad that much. Oh. So what he likes to do is he comes with his little drawing and he shows what he has done.
That's lovely.
And so obviously they have this kind of interaction that is super positive for them. It was not attended, but it's a really a side effect of that program that was quite good for our family in our situation. Yeah. So we were talking a bit about the under 4. So obviously the program is more aimed at slightly older children. But do you have any tips for, how to encourage, drawing and painting for the youngest one?
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite things, so my children are currently 5 and 3. And one of my favorite things, it depends on the setup of everyone's house, but my favorite way to teach my kids how to draw and to sort of get them in the in the motions of going, if I do a circle, then that could be the head, 2 dots for the eyes, that sort of thing, is the shower. We have a hot shower and then it steams up and then my kids, draw on the glass with their fingers. And so, they can rub it off and then it steams up again. And then they, my son, does a letter E, when he's in the shower and it's really important. I think that anything that kids do when they're younger is fun and really not directed. I mean, I think leading by example is incredibly important. So I will often just sit down and I will draw my own picture, and what I'll find is little kids will come and watch and see what I'm doing. And simply by seeing someone drawing a picture, then that encourages the child to do it. So and really, things like dirt and mud and sand, if you are anywhere outside, you can generally somehow draw on the ground because there's usually a bit of dirt nearby or sand. I suppose just, being tactile, when you're at the beach. Mind you, I'm not sure how many people have got access to a beach, but just building things, I know, but, being in Australia, I think everyone's got a beach nearby, but, just using sticks and things, because
and I think children do that spontaneously. They would take a stick and make marks.
Yeah.
For me, it's a kind of a sign. So when I see a little toddler starting to do that, it's a sign to say, okay, no, let's go and introduce mark making. And then I would have materials available for them. Obviously you choose safer material for the youngest one because they're going to probably put everything into their mouth. But you can do finger paint and you can do, Play-Doh, homemade Play-Doh, and all these kind of things. Yeah.
In fact, when I had the 4-year-old over today, she has a little sister who's, I don't know, 18 months old or something. And so while they were sitting side by side, the younger one had a paintbrush and she was kind of, making a mess or whatever. But I think one of the really important things with younger kids, this 1.5-year-old, is making sounds as well with something that you're doing. So, for example, I got the paintbrush today and I said to her, Sega, do dot, 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 and that repetition. And, her watching me, how little kids just pick that up. They're like, oh, what's going on? Something's repeating itself. So dot, 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 and then she picks it up and then does the same thing. So a lot of copying as well, because that's how we learn, from copying things that are happening around us. So, yeah.
I think being involved as a parent into the process and not just expecting that because you're going to give some painting and a paintbrush to your toddler is going to keep himself busy while you do something else.
They're not going to know what to do with it. It's like, a child is not necessarily going to know what to do with a bike. If a bike's sitting, in the front of your house, if you don't show them or demonstrate, or if they've never seen someone on a bike, they're not necessarily going to know what to do. So you're right. If you put paints down or oil pastels and paper, they're not necessarily going to know what to do with it. but they can experiment. They might, they might pick things up and go, oh, that's making a mark. I might do that again. I might do that again, which is why, a child goes and draws on a wall because they're like, oh, this is fun. It's making a mark. They're not thinking, oh, mummy's going to get really angry at me, because they're just thinking about, in the moment. So I've actually got a mark on the wall in my house at the moment.
To put some limits, like, okay, I know when the crayons are out, or I use only washable one.
Yes.
I've been quite lucky on that side. I remember one time when my daughter did it, big circle on the wall, and she was so proud.
Yeah.
And, it was washable. So I washed it, and then I made sure it was not available without me being in the room, basically.
Yeah.
Just to make
sure. And I use a lot of watercolor paints because they come out of clothes. They come off tables. It comes off a lot of things very easily. It depends on the pigment. If it's the pink or red, it's a little bit harder to get out of something that might be white. But generally, it comes off everything. And I love paint. I love watercolor paint as a medium and obviously they're non-toxic as well. So it's a really great medium for getting messy, with really young kids, or using it to color in an artwork if they're slightly older, if they're up to that stage.
Yeah, and I think that still, for them, it's still a lot of learning with the watercolor, because they understand that they have to put more water or less water to have the kind of desired tones. If they want something darker, they would have to learn a bit about, okay, it's watercolor, so if you put too much color, too much water is going to be diluted. I know that we had this kind of discussion with my son. He was frustrated because he was not as blue. And so I had to kind of show him, okay, less water and more watercolor. And, and then when they wanted to have something a bit lighter, they understood that they had to put more water. So it was a nice process. And now they get it, because obviously it's always with watercolor in the program, nearly always with it. So they kind of get it now. And, so really enjoy, and I think that's very sensorial as well, to mix up and to use the water and to go in the pen. It's very sensorial, and that's still very sensorial for all the children as well. And I think the program, as you say, the parents act as a role model, and with this program, it's very tempting, at least for me. I don't know other parents, but for me, it's very tempting to do that activities with my children, because it's not really that much about setting them up and doing my own stuff and keeping them busy. I really like to do it with them, sitting down, and they really enjoy that we do it together. Even if I tell them, okay, just do one together, they would be a bit less, oh no, we want you to do it with us. They like the connection that it brings us together to do kind of an activity together.
Yeah.
So I believe there is also lots to do for grown up as well, because going to the level 7, it's like not 7, level 5, but it's like more advanced and great for that.
Yeah, I think it's funny. A lot of adults were never taught to draw. You seem to have been very lucky with a father that is an artist. So you were probably taught to draw as a child, but the majority of people were never taught to draw, which then puts worldwide, everyone's in a situation where, well, if I was never taught to draw, how am I supposed to teach my child how to draw? Which is why I've created this, and which is why a lot of parents love coming and doing the lesson as well, because it means that they're happy to sit down and learn how to draw something. Because a lot of people say, I can't even draw a stick figure. And it's like, well, whoever showed you how to draw a person properly? And the answer inevitably is that, well, no one showed me. So that's what I'm trying to change, is this whole generation of people that can't draw. I'm trying to, teach a whole generation of kids that they can draw. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's a fear that we have as parents, and it's really like a skill. If you don't have that skill, or if you're a bit, conscious that you don't draw that well, as adults, as mainly people start to stop drawing because they cannot really reproduce something that look like the model. Spontaneously, as a child, you draw. You don't really care that your cat doesn't really look like a cat. You just draw for the pleasure to draw. And then at some point, you start to realize that it's not really. It's like a stage in drawing that we all go through, and you're going to be, an artist and being able to enjoy that, and maybe even an abstract artist that, the cat doesn't look like a cat and you don't care because you just enjoy it. And you're going to be on the other side and say, okay, it's never looked like what I wanted to look, and you're just going to give up.
Yes.
Especially
I think
if you go to,
I was going to say, one of the problems, I think, is that we live in a world where there is right and wrong. Maths, for example, 2 + 2 is 4. If a child comes up and says 6, it's like, no, that's not right. It's 4. When in English, you spell a word a certain way, and you put them together in a sentence a certain way. There's a right and there's a wrong. We live in a world where there's right and wrong. With art, there is no wrong. So it's really, but because people live in this world of right and wrong, they force that upon themselves when they're doing their art. So when they draw something, they say, oh, that's not right. But them saying that is not right, because whatever they create is right. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what it looks like. It's the process, it's the journey. And it's society's mindset that there is a right and a wrong. That's the bit that needs to be rid of in our head, because it's incorrect.
Yeah, absolutely. And we discussed a bit before the Facebook Live about the fact that art might not be value in school, but basically it's help, as you said, with other subjects.
Other subjects, yeah. So as I was saying before, they did a study in America where they figured out that the students who engaged in art, and when I say art, it's not just painting, it's, drama, music, all of the arts. If a child engaged in the arts, they were 4 times more likely to be successful in maths and English and science. So what, I don't understand the science behind it, but basically what's happening is you are engaging both sides of the brain, which helps everything in your life in terms of learning. So it's not just about art. It's about, growing your brain and making new connections and all of that really good stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's always important to have a holistic learning, and it's not just about being focusing on, it's the same, I suppose, in every country. The curriculum here is very academic focused, with English and maths and science, and other subject would be like soft subject, not as important. And as we used before, you can find information about anything anyway. So what needs to be taught, in my opinion, is like what you cannot learn, by Googling it, basically.
And also, if you think about what the jobs are going to be, when we're dead and buried, the jobs are not going to be really simple things that we're learning in school. It's going to be the really great jobs are going to be taken by those people who think outside the square, who are creative, and are okay with making mistakes and then finding new ways to fix your mistakes, which is all the really basic stuff that I teach in Artventure, is that mistakes are really important. Think of ways to fix them. And even really simple things like, you paint dripping the wrong way, and how do you deal with something that you didn't plan? All of those little tiny things, those little tiny moments that happen while you're drawing a picture, are the things that are going to help a long way down the track with finding a job and finding an occupation that suits a very modern, technologically advanced world, because the world needs people to think of new ideas to develop, in business. We're not going to be sitting in a phone booth, connecting you now, like it's not really simple jobs anymore.
The simple task job will disappear.
Yeah.
And we automate it, and with machine and these kind of things. So we need people who are creative, and
exactly.
it's a constant talk in the educational areas. Like, we need to introduce this subject much more, but it's still not there. So it's quite frustrating, for you have a daughter starting school, and I have my children in school, and I can still see that it's really like on the side. Okay, they would have like an art lesson for the whole year. They don't even have an art class every week. And so it's really why I think it's important to focus on that as a parent. I always say to, because I teach parents with Montessori, and they are keen to introduce, reading and writing and maths and all the beautiful Montessori material. But and many parents also, they want to have a playroom, and what I insist upon is like the playroom with the toys is not always necessary in my opinion, because children generally like to play where their parents are. But if there's an extra space, I always encourage them to do an art studio, because it's so underrated in school that I said, if you have that space, make it an art studio, some way when you don't care. When you don't care that the floor is going to be damaged or whatever, when you can do this wall, you can have a wall with a blackboard, and you can, have canvas on the wall and a huge table, and all the crafts are available for them to inspire them. I'm very keen to have an art studio in every house as my things when I go and help parents in their house and they come with that idea, I want to have a playroom and stuck all the toys. Say, no, have an art room. That's what you need.
Yeah, great idea.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't have the space. I don't have an extra room. So, but we have a little art area, and I'm super keen with that. I will probably show pictures later on. But yeah, it's so important for me. They have a kind of trolley with everything available, and I rotate what I put in it to try to, encourage them. And I insisted to keep a table downstairs for their art and craft at their own level, like that they can still go there and not. No, I didn't want to have them asking me to have access to the art and craft.
Yeah,
basically.
It should always be available.
Yeah, that's it. Like that, and whenever they want. And my son is so keen that basically he likes also to have the privacy of his bedroom. He likes his bedroom now. He's growing up, obviously. So he did ask to have also a desk in his bedroom. So we kind of compromise, but I keep the kind of messy stuff downstairs because I, he's quite spontaneous. So, yeah, I'm not sure what he's going to do with painting in his bedroom. So we keep the messy stuff downstairs. But yes, there's also a lot of drawing and scissors and papers in his bedroom as well. And he's constantly doing something with paper, basically. Okay, so another question I had that is maybe very specific to my situation, but as I said, there is a 4 years age gap between my children, so they tend to be a bit competitive. And obviously, because they don't have the same level, sometimes when I was doing just, we were choosing a level 1 or 2 to kind of find something that is suitable for both age, and they start to be really, like, they would compare the drawing, if I show that my son, who did the sheep, and that my daughter, who did the sheep.
Yeah.
It was like distress and like, very sad that he was not able to do the same, and try to show them obviously that they're not the same age, so they couldn't do the same thing. They're 4 years gap. But do you have any advice or tips like to encourage, no, not this one, sorry, to, ease the competition between two children, maybe even, when you draw with your child, they might say, oh, wow, you did very well, mommy, and, and feel a bit defeated because they're not quite there. And I don't know if it's something that you think about.
It's very normal.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I would suggest, I'd suggest a few things, but I think it's really important sometimes to let children have their own choices and not necessarily compare. So, for example, with the sheep, perhaps you could try doing it in 2 sessions. So you could do your son first so that he feels really great about his work as it's happening because he's not comparing it to anyone else, and you can be there close by, whatever, well done, that's looking great, as he's doing it. So he's feeling good about himself. One of the worries about having someone that's significantly older, a child in particular, is that the child is not necessarily going to say the right things to help the younger child feel good about what they're doing. They might just go, oh, yeah, thanks, mine's better than yours, which doesn't necessarily help the younger one. So then you could do the second child later after the first one, because then the first one has nothing to compare it to, and then the second child can do theirs, after lunch, whatever, later. Once the first child has received their positive motivation, their pride, they've got all those happy buzzy feelings inside, then the second child can come along later, and then the second child can mimic what they have felt as well. They can say, wow, big sister, you've done a great job, So it's not about comparing, it's about doing things at different times so that they're not comparing to each other. But if you are going to sit down and do it at the same time, I often say things like, my own daughter will say things, Mummy, mine's not as good as yours. And I always say things like, do you know what? When I was your age, I don't reckon I could draw as good as that. So if you keep practicing, when you're my age, you're going to be better than me. And saying things like that, I find, talking about how, because it's a little bit difficult for them to understand the concept of, later in life, if you keep practicing, you'll get really good. But if you put it in a way that, I couldn't do that when I was your age, then it makes them go, oh, I might be better than my mum, and it's sort of a strange way to put it, but that's one of the things that I found works, is that process of me going, I'm good now, but it's because I've had lots of practice. But when I was really little, I was not much good at all. And a child hearing that I wasn't good, but now I am, it makes them kind of go, okay, so I could get better. I'm not sure what it does, but that comment for me seems to work. But I think the best thing to do is, if you are going to sit down and do them all together, it's really important to, I find, not have breaks in, how you pause the lesson and you follow along step by step. The longer you pause, the more opportunity there is for comment. So what I do as often as possible is you pause, all right, that step, and then as you're watching, especially if you know that there's a bit of competition going on, spacebar is the best thing to, pause and stop, really easily. I press spacebar before they've finished that last bit. So their attention goes from finishing that bit to, the next bit's happening. So you've bridged that gap that allows comments for them to go, I'm finishing my bit. Oh, hers looks better than mine. Like there's that moment as a parent, you can kind of catch that little moment and make sure that kind of doesn't happen, because then it stays a really positive experience. Because as soon as those comments start happening, they'll continue happening. So as a parent, if you know that they're going to happen, then you can, that's one of the great things about Artventure is I'm not actually there. So if you press spacebar, I'm going to go, okay, the next thing we're going to do, and I'm not paying attention to their little comments. And so their attention comes straight back to me on the screen. So you can use that to your advantage as well as a parent, to kind of go, okay, no gaps. And then one last thing is, if you are going to do it together, it depends on your setup. If you've got more than one device, it might be mum's iPhone and then an iPad or something. If you've got some earphones, then they can make their own choices. Level 1 for the 4-year-old and a level 3, whatever, for I can't remember the ages of your kids, but 4 and 10 or whatever. So you can actually have their own artworks, and they're in their own, zone, looking at the artwork, looking at their own thing, and don't have them sitting next to each other, because they will start going like, oh, what are you doing? But if you sort of have them opposite each other, potentially with a laptop in between or whatever, they will focus on what they're doing. Their peripheral vision kind of won't go, and because their brain can't really figure out what that is if it's upside down, because if the person's opposite you. So having them opposite is better than sitting next to each other as well. So little things that you can do to try and maintain the positivity.
That's very helpful, because I didn't think about those tips at all. I didn't even think about giving them their own device, and obviously that makes sense. If they were going to an art class together, because they wouldn't be the same level, I'm sure the teacher would give them, a different activity, and they wouldn't, they would just come back with 2 different drawings, because they would have done 2 different drawings.
Exactly.
So, we're totally able to do 2 devices, and my daughter is 10, so she would be delighted to have the earplugs and, just the earphone. Totally makes sense. I didn't even think about that. And but the pause moment, totally. It's when it's become tricky. That's when they start to indeed compare each other. And my son is a bit slower. So
I think it's really important as the adult to you're sort of setting the tone for the way the art lesson is going. So if you're upbeat and positive the whole time for both, wow, that's great. Wow, that's great. Oh, great job. Wow, you're doing really good. And no pauses in their lesson, then you're also educating the child about what this experience looks like and feels like. If you're continually saying, oh, yours looks better than mine, yours looks better than mine, that's what they're going to say every time. So you have to break that cycle so that what they're used to doing is the positive thing. Actually, that reminds me, what I used to do in every class is if there was a moment of negativity, what I used to do is I used to get a child, any child this was a physical art class, but it's the same at home or whatever. I used to get a child to stand up and look at the other person's artwork and a few things. So it was really good for communication. They used to say their name and then they used to look at the artwork and say, you know, Johnny, I really like your, and then point to something. And it might be, if it's that sheet that you just showed me, it might be the spots on the sheet. It can be really simple, but they say, Johnny, I really like your spots on the sheet. And then Johnny has to turn around and say, thank you, Sally. So you're using their name, you're using your manners, you're finding something positive. And if you structure it in that way, they know that they're not allowed to find something negative. They have to find something positive.
Yeah.
And then they swap over.
That's my dog.
They swap over and then they do the opposite so that they're both experiencing, oh, someone's praising me and I'm going to praise you. It's a really great thing to get into, a great practice to get into, is that positive talk.
We are dealing with it, I think, hopefully. Okay, so maybe we can now talk a bit more about, you know, clearly what is the program, how does it work, and, you know, give as many information as we can to the people now in this group.
Sure.
I've talked about it a lot already, but yeah, I think that's nice to talk about it with you.
Yeah, sure. So Artventure is a library of art classes that are online. They are based on the Australian National Curriculum. Obviously, you can use it anywhere, but they are designed for primary school teachers and that includes homeschoolers and whatever, to use either in their classroom or at home or just as parents looking to do things as well. So, yeah, so they're rated in terms of difficulty. So a level 1 is probably about a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, but everyone enjoys doing them. And then they go all the way up to level 5, which is quite advanced, sort of year 7, which is about 12 years old or something. Yeah, so you can choose, and there's 300. I release a new lesson every week. There's 336. I think we're up to today. We release one every Monday. So there's lots to choose from, but it's really good in terms of working in with what you're doing with your learning anyway. So if you're talking about the seasons, for example, then you might do a summer picture. You know, if you're doing autumn or fall, depends where you are in the world, you know, there's a giant leaf that's a really simple artwork, but it's really beautiful. So it's incorporating what you're already learning and then, you know, creating a lesson that is based on something that you're already learning in class. She disappeared. Where's she gone?
I know it's not the season, but we have done the leaf. I don't know where it is.
Oh.
So I wanted to show it, but I don't know where it is because I really enjoy that one myself. I remember doing the leaf, loving it. But we did also the Christmas wreath.
The Christmas wreath, yep.
I loved it. So that's mine, I think.
Great. Beautiful.
So I really love to do it. And, you know, yeah, as I said, even as an adult, you really can enjoy it.
Yeah. It's very therapeutic as well. I enjoy creating them. See, I think the thing for me, and the reason that Artventure works is that because I've spent a lot of time working with kids, I use language that makes sense to them. So a lot of online art classes or whatever will say things like, so this bit goes like that. And for a child, it's like, well, what does that mean? You know, and so what I'll do is I'll start with things like, you know, the first thing we're going to do is something in the shape of a hill. And a child goes, oh, I understand what a hill is. And I might say things like, okay, so this shape is like a cat for cat. And if a child is up to learning, you know, the alphabet, then they'll understand the concept of what a cat for cat shape is. So the language that I use is really simple, but it's stuff that kids are already learning. So it's kind of making those connections so that a child goes, I understand what she's asking me to do, and I can see what she's doing because it's a video. But the other important thing is watching the lesson from the beginning. So especially with younger kids, you watch the whole lesson first, which usually goes between 5 and 10 minutes. And then once the child has watched it and their brain goes, oh, I understand what those shapes are going to do to create whatever it might be, then you replay the lesson and you can actually follow along step by step. So that, and if you've got a really young child, then you pause it really frequently and you sort of, watch what they're doing to sort of stop it when you think, okay, my child doesn't understand the next bit, so we'll watch it, and then you pause it again, and then you watch it, and then you pause it again. Whereas a slightly more advanced child can watch, a couple of steps and then you pause it. So it depends on where they're up to in their process, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really well done the way we stop and start again, and you have I think that we can see a little arrow or something that gives you a cue when to pause. So it's really helpful, and I think watching first and doing it's very helpful as well, and it's not time consuming as well for us as parents. Okay, all the lessons you've made are like, as you say, maximum 10 minutes. I mean, for the one that we have done so far, maybe when we go to level 5, it lasts longer. But,
I try to keep them to 10 minutes because who wants to sit and watch something for more than 10 minutes? No one has that kind of patience. So,
no.
Yeah, I try to edit them as short as I can.
Yeah, so it's really well done, and the way you accelerate for the painting, because obviously they know what to do by then. They don't need to watch you doing it for the longer it takes.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I find the whole program super easy to use, and there is always something new. I know that my children like to search for something new, and they always find something. It's never been a day when they don't find something to do, and I think my big pile here, and it's not all we have. It's kind of testimonial that we use it a lot, and I find that it's really a nice activity to do together, and and I believe that you're not always lucky to find an art teacher locally, and so it's amazing that you've done that, because I was kind of a bit hopeless to try to find an art teacher.
Yeah, I mean, my clients, I feel like a lot of them are either sort of in the country or in remote areas where they don't have art teachers. I mean, Artventure is not designed for people that have awesome art teachers. I think it's brilliant. If you've got an art teacher around, great, go and spend some time with them, because there's nothing quite like spending time with someone that can actually physically be there with you. But for all of those kids out there who don't have an art teacher and mum and dad don't quite know how to teach how to draw, this is a brilliant tool, because it's so simple, but it also sort of bridges that gap between, what's a healthy screen time and what's not. Because what they're doing is they're using their screen. They feel kids are great, we're using the iPad, but what they're actually doing is they're creating something tangible that they can, stick up on the fridge. So it's a really positive way to use your screen time as well.
Absolutely. So, yeah, and well, that's what we try to do as well as adults. Okay, we use medias because we need it. We use screen because we need to work on it. So we need to search for information, but it's not really like we're playing aimlessly some video games. And so it's great for your children to see that they can use media the same way. I know my daughter uses a program that has been recommended by the school about timetables and maths, and so she likes that already. And we have a kind of language program because they like to learn Spanish, and so this one was a perfect addition, and I've been using it for a year, so I can really say that we love it. Okay, and I think we receive a question, so just to repeat it, it starts what could start at 4 years old, right?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the child. My daughter was drawing pictures at kind of, 2, but my son's 3.5 and he's kind of not very keen. So it depends on the child.
Yeah, but it could be, probably a good investment from 4 years old, I would say too. But
definitely.
There are a few, I mean, that's a 48 hours trial. So if parents set it up, say, free trial at the weekend when they have a bit of time, they can really search all the drawing and do a few drawing over that weekend. I think you have a few free one on YouTube as well. So if parents
Yes.
want to try those one, that's what we did. In fact, we kind of found you.
Oh, did you?
When we received the free trial link from someone, in the homeschooling community, I think, and then I found a few free on YouTube because we haven't committed yet. And then finally I said, okay, yeah, you really like it, we're going to take it. And then that's what we did. I think I did everything that was available from you, and then we committed to it. And so yeah, if parents want to try even with a 3 years old and they notice that he can do something with it, then go for it. And if you try with your 6 years old and he's not interested, then maybe wait, or see if you can do a bit more drawing with him to make him more interesting. And that's
I think it's really important. I'll just note that it's really important for whoever is there sort of, monitoring screen time, or, obviously we do that because the kids are so little. It's really important for that person to be in a really good mindset too. They've got to sort of be really relaxed and really positive, because often, especially if you've got a child who is not that keen on drawing, you've kind of got to sort of ease them into it, because you really do want it to be a really positive experience. So, I think it's important for mums or teachers to keep that in mind as well, that the way they are and what they say and what they do has a really big impact on that child as well. So, yeah.
Great. Well, it was good to talk with you today, and we had a few people watching, even if it's lunchtime here, and not as easy for the people in this group to watch. And, I know that some of you have very younger children, so might not be in that stage where you want to use that program, but I'm sure they will watch this replay tonight and ask more questions maybe. So if I have if I have a really specific question that I cannot answer or cannot send the link to your blog or to your website, I will just send you the question if you don't mind. And it was a pleasure to have you here, and I'm sure, I have at least more Artventure ahead of me with the kids this summer. And I'm looking forward to see you next step, because you have
Thank you very much.
More ideas in mind. So I'm really looking forward to the next step for you as well. Okay, thank you so much. If you want to stay 2 minutes when I'm ending that, just to finish with you. Okay.
Sure.